Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the Monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have one good brother and two good sisters. Ha 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 ha! Making her return. We have good sister Miss Starlight. I will come up with a nickname later once enough time has passed. Don't worry, everybody gets one. Then we have then in the second corner we have the biggest catboy apologist in the temple. Good sister spoiler.
I mean, that actually is true.
I feel like Mickey's a bigger Catboy apologist than. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, but you're the one who called yourself a Catboy connoisseur, so you get what
that was Doc!
You didn't deny it.
Was I supposed to?
If you didn't want it.
I could always go back to calling you the floor tank.
Whoa, what the fuck?
Dragoon main.
I would not deny it.
Just like you didn't deny Catboy Connoisseur. Thus both are true. Process of elimination.
I think that logic is flawed. But okay.
And, of course, in the final corner, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
If there are three corners, that makes this a triangle ring. And if this is a triangle ring, that's the Triforce.
No. I am not one.
Well,
I am not.
Count?
I already did one corner.
No. You see, Monk, you're the ref, so you're in the middle of the ring.
I am
it
not
is
wearing
a Triforce.
stripes. I am not wearing stripes.
He doesn't be a rainbow shirt. I don't know.
He doesn't wear black and white stripes because he's black.
Fuck off.
I got that one out early today.
So
would just need only white stripes.
We are coming out of summer. Thank God. Winter can't come fast enough. And
well, she is a nice cold lady, so I would assume so.
And we are back on the Reconstruction train for part 3 in what is continued to be the most ambitious project we've done since we started the whole Reconstruction experiment. Which even though some people back out of it, it's still one of my most fun endeavors on this show. And we are back once again talking about RWBY, because this week we are dealing with part 3 of our reconstruction of RWBY, this time covering our volumes 7, 8, and 9, or the Atlas arc. And some of you may be looking at the art going, wait, that doesn't look like how they look like in this during volume 7 and 8. That was an accidental choice. But it's one that I decided to lean into because, oh boy, the design change. I've talked about this in the past about how there seems to have been a gradual degradation of character design since I'd say since volume 4. And but this had some nadir moments. Some people turned out relatively better than others. The worst I could say about RWBY was just having a bad haircut. Weiss, a bit too much blue. Although that's a problem that can be labeled at a lot of characters when it comes to the color their name's supposed to represent and the color they actually wear. The giant braids thing is a bit much, though. Yang didn't go through too many changes, but didn't care for how patchwork it looked. Blake, on the other hand, what the fuck did they do to you? Who the fuck thought doing that bob cut was a good idea?
Butch lesbians, that's who.
Probably the same person who thought giving Ruby a new haircut was a good idea. And probably the same people who thought Jean's haircut was a good idea.
Oh my god. Oh my god, don't get me started on that.
Oh. I'd say when it comes to the former Team Juniper, the only person who came out of the outfit change relatively unscathed was Nora.
Yeah.
Which
isn't saying much. That's a pretty low bar, Monk.
And I know some people might go, "What about Lyren? What the fuck is with that archery sleeve for somebody who's not an archer?"
And the fact that it's bright.
Bright fucking pink. But the nadir of it all was what they did with Neapolitan.
Ah, yes, the corset that isn't.
What happens when somebody has an idea of doing a corset, suspenders, and a trench coat and can't pick which one?
Just get rid of the suspenders, do the corset and trench coat, and it would look a lot better.
But that would involve competent people, and I bring these kind of things up because I have talked on multiple occasions about the importance of having a series Bible, a document that you can look to keep everything consistent. I don't have any proof one way or the other, but I have had the strongest suspicion that there is not one when it comes to Miles Luna and Carrie Shawcross's inner circle of writers and the like.
Yeah.
Especially since there's a bit of a author-itis where they feel they need to keep topping each other. Zan, you're familiar with this particular concept as somebody who's suffered through several of the 40K novels.
Yeah. Authors trying to make the next book bigger than the last one, especially if it's a different author.
Looking at you, the beast. And anytime Aaron Dembski-Bowden has to write about Imperials.
Or Matt Ward has to write about Ultramarines.
No, he's fine writing about Ultramarines. It's when he has to write anything else. Actually, just Matt Ward writing, period.
Exactly.
Not everybody can be Dan Abnett. Much like not everybody in L5R can be Rich Wolf. But Volumes 7 and 8 in the canon series, which first off, I think trying to do a 2-volume arc when you've been doing 3-volume arcs up until this point is a really stupid move. But this was, for a lot of people, the breaking point. This is where a lot of people really set in the whole introduce more characters in lieu of actual writing, as well as one of the most convoluted deals with a genie that I've ever seen. Even though they never explain what the hell a soul is in this universe. Yeah, that whole thing was really dumb. And of course, how could I forget taking one of the inner circle members of Ozpin's group and doing a heel turn that is about as forced as Daenerys in Game of Thrones Season 8.
This is what we call character assassination.
And for a lot of people, the combination of all of this, including the ridiculous amount of entitlement that Team RWBY was demonstrating, especially Ruby herself, a lot of people got just fed up, and they threw their hands up, about the whole thing. And of course, how could I forget bringing back Penny only to kill her off again?
Please don't make me talk about that.
Well, you don't have to. We don't have a Penny in our series at all.
Yeah, let me get that out of the way first. We elected to not bring Penny back. She died in Volume 3.
I don't think we even discussed her, Monk. I don't think we even invoked her.
We didn't because it wasn't because the way that particular thing went down, we didn't see a reason to change it.
Yeah. We just had for all intents and purposes, we just had Pyrrha as the maiden the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And within all of that, that's also where I started to see more and more videos just roasting Miles and Carrie a new asshole.
Okay.
And that's the reason why I say these volumes were the breaking point. And I know that they've done they did some teasers a few months ago about Volume 9, which is in a completely different place, and doing the splitting the party again, even though we already went through this, which leads me to believe that they're going to be doing the whole spinning the wheels and trying to go beyond 12 volumes instead of having a plan and sticking to it. Because, trying to infinitely extend the story worked out so well for Red versus Blue, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, in fact, if I were to use an analogy, Volumes 7 and 8 for RWBY are kind of like what happened with the last two seasons of Red versus Blue, and especially Zero. I've yet to find anybody who liked Zero. And it's a mockery that is well deserved. But it didn't exactly help that there were plenty of other characters who got character assassinated, and I'd say around this time was when we started to see the FNDM get real toxic. Probably because of how many people were criticizing it by this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that there was toxicity beforehand, but
There was.
But I feel like around this time it just accelerated.
Absolutely.
The swan song, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fandom knows it's dying.
I remember there being talk about Extinction Burst, and that's kind of the vibe I get. It didn't, and of course, it didn't exactly help that around this time, Rooster Teeth was more in that. I think this was around the same time that Rooster Teeth was trying to really, really push that other project, that other heavily CG project that they were working on. That was
Genlock?
Yep, Genlock, which I had said at the time putting Genlock on their plate was a bad idea because of the celebrity voice talent that they were bringing in was going to make it very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Because I seriously
I only
doubt
watched the first season because of David Tennant.
Yeah, David Tennant and Michael B. Jordan, I seriously doubt they came cheap.
Mm.
News to me that they were even in it. To be honest, I paid so little attention to it.
I only
No,
saw.
I only
saw it
watched
when
the
it,
first season.
I only saw it when it
because
was
of
on
David
Toonami.
Tennant.
It
And
was on Toonami?
yeah,
Goodness.
for a hot minute.
Why?
The plot didn't make sense at all.
Uh,
I didn't get it.
but
It was
With-
like this terrible plot twist. Everything obvious.
Pro tip,
Indians.
folks: don't cast out sequel bait unless you're actually gonna get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's about as dumb as throwing out your line without bait, and thinking you're gonna get a fish.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And for anyone wondering why am I doing a fishing analogy when it comes to RWBY and Genlock, it's because I'm Minnesotan.
Dude, have you tried fly fishing?
Yes.
You're
Dude,
asking
so
this to
fun.
someone who lives in Minnesota. That's
Mm,
that was yeah, it's Minnesota.
Hmm.
Fly fishing is really fun.
But with all that said, let us have a go. So when we left things off at the end of the Haven arc, we had it set up where they had managed to get the name list after everything was resolved. That was the good news. The bad news was the name list was a few years out of date.
Quite a few years.
Mm-hmm. To the point that they mention Maria Calavera in her 20s on that list.
Mm-hmm.
And but there was a bit of a clue that she was spotted in Atlas. Plus, now that they have a full-on relic, going to the one place with a near monopoly on information on just about anything is a natural next step, which is the reason why they're going to Atlas instead of to find somebody to take the relic off their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd still have the train scene in regards to this. The only difference is that Maria isn't on the train.
Yep.
Also, because I forgot to mention it last time, by the end of the Haven arc, the Team RWBY and Team Junior are all full-fledged hunters, license and all. They're at the lowest rank of hunter, but they are hunters now.
Mm-hmm.
I know I should be saying huntsman and huntress, but I never understood the point of having to use two separate terms like that.
Yeah.
When hunter is going to be far more expedient.
I don't even think they were their usage of it either.
I don't think they thought about it until later on.
Mostly because again, no series
I don't think
Bible.
they think.
Again, no series Bible. This is why having one is important. And of course, Weiss has to get back because, well, this was a temp deal.
Mm-hmm.
The sole reason she was able to get forces into Haven was by talking with her father about the whole thing. And one might ask, why can't they just use the aircraft that she used? Well, for one, that was a loner, and two, that particular aircraft was built more for the environment in Mistral and Haven, not for Atlas.
The other aircraft were, because that one came straight from Atlas. Yeah. It would have had to been built for Atlas.
Yeah, the point is
that one had to go back when they let Blake and Weiss off at Haven.
Yeah, but she can't just call in another aircraft. is the key thing.
Mhm.
Just because she's the heir apparent doesn't mean that she can just
Get
like
whatever she wants.
no. And it's important to bring that kind of thing up because once you introduce that somebody has a great deal of latitude in what they can do, then you end up creating questions, and those questions you have to answer.
Or
But
there'll be plot holes and stuff.
mhm. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have what happened with Adam. Namely, he got his ass kicked.
Yet again.
And the so we'd shift over to the White Fang HQ because the sole reason that he's still alive is the White Fang being composed mostly of faunus and thus being being very having very pragmatic leanings. They're not paid to fight to the death.
Mhm.
So when things ended up going south, they made a tactical retreat. But they still lost a lot of resources on that gamble. And as anyone will tell you, sometimes when you gamble, you lose your shoes.
Is that really the saying?
Lose your shirt, lose your shoes, you lose something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
But because of that, his mindset is we need to shore up assets, build the armory back up, and build up our forces. And because of that, his mindset is to accelerate his plans when it comes to taking control of Menagerie. Much in the same way that Rome was treated as an easy payday. You know, the whole sacking Rome and all that.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I should note we had no plans on doing a redemption arc for Adam because we're not doing the Crazy X, so there isn't a need to.
Excuse me.
But
Yeah.
shifting back to the main team, the train was just one leg of the journey. This is as with any journey, it's not like you could take one train and immediately get there. Eventually, the route that they're taking, eventually they're going to have to hike it out because there isn't a train route to that area.
Mhm.
And it's in the it's through that leg of the journey that there's the opportunity to kind of reset the board a bit. Since Volume 7 is our board resetting like we've done in the past. And this time having a better this time expanding on the concept of relics and the concept of the gods, which I think this is as good a time as any to go into how we treated both, because we've hinted at it in the past, but we haven't dived whole hog into it.
Mhm.
So first off, the whole a god of light and a god of darkness, fuck that noise.
And we got rid of it.
And I think this is as good a time as any to go into why we got rid of it. It wasn't just because we didn't like it, even though we didn't. It's because it doesn't fit Remnant.
It really did just come out of nowhere.
Yep.
In fact, I believe when we were discussing it, I made allusions to how the presence of the Pa wraiths in Deep Space Nine undermines the prophets.
It's like they wanted magic to be in their story, but didn't know how to do it. So they're like, "Hey, yo, they used to be gods, by the way."
Which is their being gods is perfectly fine, especially with a setting that's all about fairy tales and legends and the like.
Hmm.
Where the problem
But
sets
I,
in is trying to do this trying to do this binary.
mm, feel like they're I don't know what the word is. Their execution was just lacking, and also, like spoiler said, it came out of nowhere. Just out of nowhere, they're like, "Here's some background story stuff that doesn't match this story that we're creating."
Right. And it's like, I guess it was supposed to be this big reveal, but
There's
it
a
was
lot
like,
of plot holes and like
yeah,
questions that weren't answered, and they just they don't have answers, so they're
right.
making up more things
It's like
to cover up.
they they studied at the J.J. Abrams School of Plot of like, oh, here's this mystery box. Why is the moon broken? Like, we've talked about magic. Like, is there real magic? Like, sure. But then it was like, instead of um like everyone else was getting like I guess swords and weapons and stuff, and then you open yours up and it's a stuffed animal. Where it's like, okay,
Also, so they're like, magic doesn't exist, but I'm like, bitch, your semblance basically is magic. You can make things come out of nowhere
what's the
by
and
using quote unquote aura. Like, what?
especially when you look at Weiss's semblance, and it uses glyphs, and it has like it uses runes, and you sit there and you're like, but we know that this isn't magic because Word of God says so. But what's the difference between a semblance and
Deemed
magic?
magic. Yeah.
This is why it's important to have a series Bible. You can expand the world as the story goes on, but you need
Mhm.
to have an idea on what sort of expansion you're going to be doing before you even do that.
Right. To be a little fair, that might not have been a Miles and Harry problem from the get go. It might have started with Monty, because Monty was an animator. He wasn't necessarily um,
Writer.
a storyteller. Yeah, a writer.
Yeah.
That wasn't his main focus. That said, that's something they should have hammered out.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not
They
giving them a pass.
basically at the beginning they had, instead of like having just people that are good at writing, they just pooled together ideas, and then they just went from there. I
Yeah,
feel like,
but we're getting back
and
on the
after he died, they lost their pillar. Feel like they're like, I don't know what we're doing with this.
getting back on the rails.
Yeah.
The big reason why the whole God of Light and Darkness stuck in my head, stuck in my craw, is the fact that this is not a story about defined good and evil. This is not Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
You've established a very clear shade of gray kind of thing, and whenever I say that this isn't a defined good and evil story, people will throw Salem and the Grimm at me. That's a
Even
cop out.
then, yeah.
That's a cop out because, for one, um, Grimm are just are monsters, and the attempts to try and make Salem into Sauron kind of don't work when you show the monster.
Mhm.
Whereas you look back at Lord of the Rings, even just saying Sauron's name is enough to get people nervous.
Terrifies some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if people don't know Salem exists, they won't be scared, you know? Only we know that she exists for like for a few volumes or like episodes, and then they find out Salem exists.
But
It doesn't hit as hard.
Zan, I remember that you had summed up the whole light and dark problem pretty succinctly when we were planning.
The issue is that the Grimm aren't absolutely evil, nor are the hunters absolutely good. It's forces of nature fighting each other. It's this having an absolute evil and an absolute good implicates the Grimm as something that then must be destroyed instead of simply being a byproduct of existence.
Mm-hmm.
It also really, really polarizes everything and very clearly shows you who the real good guys and the real bad guys are.
And there's no gray line usually,
Yeah.
and
There's no
that
nuance.
You should have. There should be at least one, like a little bit of a gray line, but there's not.
Yeah.
And that's
It's
why
like
it lacks power.
and like that's something that like with Ozpin, like they keep trying to like put him in that morally gray area, but it
Doesn't hit. It just does not hit. It doesn't work.
it's like they don't know how. It's like they don't actually know what they're trying to do with him. I think. I
Just
think
like
that-
they're just like, we haven't used this guy in a while. Let's just use him again for some reason. Let's just put him into the story again for no. Just make a reason. We don't have a reason. Let's just make one.
It also doesn't fit the cosmology of everything else they built.
Yeah.
Literally everything else that was built into this story is done in fours. 4 nations, 4 relics, 4 major academies, 4 hunters to every team.
2 gods? Question mark?
2 gods, 2 ultimate leaders of both. That doesn't make sense.
And because
Should be
of that, the approach that we've taken that's explored here is that there were 4 gods: creation, destruction, order, and chaos. And it's important to note that none of these 4 are what you would consider evil.
Nor are any 4 of them considered good.
Mm-hmm.
They are more natural forces than anything.
Yeah.
And before any of y'all out there say, well, it's clear that you want order over chaos.
No.
In a model of rigid order, that is absolute order, you have stagnation and stasis. Nothing moves, nothing changes. In a model of absolute chaos, you have nothing but fluidity. There's no form, there's nothing certain. Mm-hmm. The combination of the two is part of what makes life.
Mm-hmm. And each of those these sort of scenes is where we kind of get the equivalent to the creation myth, because each of them paired off to try and create something in Remnant. A lot of the animal kingdom was created through the gods of creation and destruction. Creation and order created mankind. Creation and chaos created the Faunus. Destruction and chaos created the Grimm. Order and chaos created the concept of structured magic spells. the
Which I think magic would be perfect as ordered to chaos.
essentially, this is something we've hinted at, but we've gone with the idea that long ago, the concept of what's known as true magic was a thing, which is magic in a very traditional sense. A lot of people, a lot of that knowledge was lost with time, and the closest thing to it is things like semblances. But when the gods had left, because of not because they were being not because the humans had turned against them, but because they felt that remnant was that they had done all that they could do, and basically whether or not they look at remnant as a failure or a success, no one knows. But they left behind the 4 relics, which have the same shape. They're still the relics are still kept inside the vaults, and they still house a spirit. As an aside, calling one of them Jen when they all presumably look like genies is kind of dumb. But the whole thing of them being able to call the gods to judge humanity is still a thing. There is one other avenue. Having just the relics is not enough. You need the relics and the maidens in order to do it. And the lamp, which is the one that they have, is the relic of order. And instead of the whole three questions every century, which seemed a bit
Arbitrary. Yeah.
Instead, we have the Akashic records. Those of you who have seen Kamen Rider Double will recognize this. Will recognize this as akin to the planet's bookshelves. But Zan, could you give the skinny on the Akashic records, because that's a bit of an esoteric concept?
Absolutely, Monk. The Akashic records are the idea that all of the knowledge that is, all of the knowledge that was, and all of the knowledge that will be can be found in one place. For those of you familiar with, say, Warhammer 40k, this is the ever-eponymous Black Library. For those of you, as Monk pointed out, familiar with Kamen Rider Double, these are the bookshelves Philip searches through when he does his keyword searches. And much like Philip's bookshelves, or the Earth's bookshelves, as it was rightfully pointed out, with our version of the Akashic records, you must be specific in the information you are looking for. The more general the question you give, the more general of an amount of information you're going to get. If you ask, what's for lunch? Well, you're going to get the possible combinations of every food that could be used for lunch ever. However, if you ask...
And probably get a massive migraine from information overload.
Exactly. The more specific your question gets, the more specific and relevant the answer becomes. And that is the balance point for this. Can you create a question specific enough for your design to get the answer you want?
Mm-hmm.
Hot MILFs in my area? Question mark?
Oh my god. Spoiler. That question's generic enough, you might get all the hot MILFs in your area being the entire Lanikinia, the Lanikinia local cluster.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know what that means, that's the super cluster of galaxies that the Milky Way is a part of.
Mm-hmm. So, the other thing that's explained in this info dump is the nature of the maidens. Originally, they were meant to be the guardians for the relics. That was until the academy system was put in because because of the fact that it would be a lot easier to guard it if you had a whole staff of people instead of one person. There have been a lot of women who have held the title of maiden over the centuries. Not all of them necessarily being human. There have been faunus maidens in the past. As far as how many have done it, nobody knows, but it's not an unheard of thing. But being a maiden does come with a price, and this is where it can really hit home about why Pyrrha was hesitant about becoming the Fall Maiden. It's harder if you're one of the maidens. It is harder for most people to remember you. They may remember a vague outline about you or something you may have said, but it's fuzzy. And this is not a contrivance. This is by design. When you consider the immeasurable amount of power that any of the maidens can have on their own, that kind of power. Those who would wish to would probably try and manipulate a maiden to fight on their behalf. The thus you have that kind of thing, and it basically turns people's perception of a maiden into deja vu, for lack of a better term. It's not like their memory isn't erased; it's just fuzzy. And
Yeah,
when
they
you
have a difficulty remembering who the maiden specifics about the maiden, just that they met the maiden.
which is also why it's hard to tell how many have been human and how many have been faunus. Except for those who are a bit more in the know about this kind of thing. And the thing now, with all of this info, including some of the reveals from the past, and yes, this does include the fact that Ozpin was once known as Ozma, a true mage from centuries ago, though he never gives his exact age. Because if anybody asks his exact age, the answer would probably be something to the extent of "you can't count that high." But but Ozpin himself is a true mage. Arguably one of the few remaining true mages left on Remnant. And as far as the question of why not use that knowledge to make other true mages, well, the answer to that is simple. He tried, and it blew up in his face. It's like, yeah, let's teach a whole bunch of people magic and hope that they don't turn on each other.
Yeah.
'Cause it seemed like a concept that they were trying to go with when they were expanding who Ozpin was the idea of him having good intentions that led to disastrous consequences. The problem is the way that they did it. So with something like this, we have that same motif, but it's not done so haphazardly or a way to diminish him. And
Yeah, like we don't need to attack his character while setting up his.
and as far as why, the other thing to make clear is that with the way things were going, he had felt that he was going to have to explain these revelations at some point,
Hmm.
but he wanted to delay that for as long as he could. His reason for that is he wanted them to at least have some semblance of a childhood and adolescence.
At this point, though, he's seen how the trend is going, so he is no longer able to keep to that point.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to trust them, seeing all the things that they've done. They have the ability and the strength to stand the truth of the matter.
And the with that in mind, the true there's also in the canon volumes there was this attitude about trying to have a theme around trust, except they couldn't be consistent with that because they kept keeping, even though they kept saying no more secrets, then they proceed to keep secrets from each other.
Hmm.
In this case, our Ozpin does not do that, and avoids being completely stupid and retarded.
Hmm.
Because at this point they are hunters. Although he's if one of them brings up that they're hunters now, they're not just his students. He'd probably be quick to remind them, "You're hunters, but you are barely above rookies at this point."
I mean, in rank, I don't think he'd do that for real, though.
No.
Be like he'd probably, if anything, he'd be more likely to say, even though it says you only started being hunters, you've been hunters for a long time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And in that same vein, when it comes to the whole info dump thing, this is where there would be the exploration of Salem's court, the group of people that had been nicknamed Team Witch. So the problem that I had with quote unquote Team Witch is that they don't have a whole lot of characterization. Again, there's this problem that Luna and Shawcross have of introducing more characters instead of building up the ones that they already have.
Yep.
It's the Utano Prince Sama conundrum. Just adds more characters.
There's a
The
part
old
of me
ones.
that wonders if the reason for adding more and more characters is fodder for fan artists and cosplayers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they just don't know how to character progression, like growth and stuff. They just don't know how to do
I would argue maybe giving me personally, like I would give them the benefit of the doubt if it's more of just the rule of cool so out of hand where they don't temper it with actual writing character development.
Part of the reason
I feel
bring
like they don't want to do any more character growth because they feel like they're perfect now, and I'm like, no, they're not perfect. Everyone's always growing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Then again, these are the same people who aren't willing to address whenever their characters make some massive mistakes. Because how many times have we seen characters who really need a reason you suck speech?
A lot.
Yeah, I'd bring up how, as an aside, I'd bring up how we needed that with Korra, but we've already covered that over a year ago. But the final leg, I forget the name of that region, but the final leg is where we get to that one place that had the primary airship to get to Atlas proper. And this is where some of our bigger changes came in, because even Zan, somebody who is far less invested in RWBY, went, "What the fuck?" when he saw the Goliath.
Colossus.
Why do I keep calling it the Goliath?
I don't know.
But the Colossus is probably one of the worst mech designs I've ever seen.
It's a pill. It's a pill.
It's a messed up boombox.
No, it is a cylinder made. It is a cylindrical robot made of more cylinders.
Even the worst of 80s BattleTech designs. At least you could see how they could work. Like some of the really unfortunate designs from the FASA era.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
in this case, we do dare to refuse the Colossus.
Mm-hmm.
Could we? Does that make Luna and Shawcross a dirty clanners, Monk?
Can we say that they were members of Clan Smoke Jaguar?
Sure. Sure, why not?
We'll lead the charge at Tukid. They never came back.
Mm-hmm. Remember Tukid.
Mm-hmm.
And
remember, folks, pay your HPG bills.
Or else.
But we are still going with the idea that it's under lockdown, but instead of it being locked down because of some crazy old lady, it's in lockdown because they have been getting attacked by a massive Gojira style Grim, but for legal purposes we can't call it Gojira.
No, it's not Gojira. It only looks like Gojira. But we can't call it Gojira for legal purposes. Oh! Ah! Run from not Gojira!
But like if we have to give it a name, I don't know, fucking Leviathan.
I mean, Leviathan was the name of the original one, so I don't see why not.
Yeah, and it fits within the theme. But it shows up, they shoot at it, then it leaves. But it's been getting closer every time it shows up.
Yep, almost like it's getting a feel for their defenses.
Mm-hmm. And
wow, how does this Grim have more intelligence than most of the humans?
The world may never know. But this is a common tactic. You see it throughout history, doing skirmishes to test the defenses before you start going all in,
or testing the waters because it's in the water.
Boo!
I'll be here all week, folks.
But
my terrible puns did talk. Thank you.
Yeah, but the reason they know
See, it wasn't me this time.
is because they figured that they'd be able to use Weiss's connections to get passage aboard an airship to Atlas. Problem is, because they're like, no ships are going to or from Atlas until that gets dealt with, because if it shows up in the middle of transit, a ship might get caught in the crossfire and get shot at.
Yep, they're sitting ducks.
Mm-hmm.
It's at this point that we should also make a note that the defense system we've given these border settlements essentially is layered. You have multiple stages of defenses with multiple different types of gun turrets and other such ideas, with all of the mechanical prowess of Atlas implied, obviously. And ultimately, there is well, how many of you people have watched Gundam Seed and what they did at the Alaska encounter there? Because the final line of defense in this case is a weapon of mass destruction scale strategic dust missile. Basically a nuke without being a nuke.
Without all that without all that radiation stuff.
Yeah. And they're worried that they're eventually going to have to get to that point just to take this thing out. And it's while...
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's while Weiss is trying to negotiate passage, being, you know, the scion of the Schnee family, and being told in no uncertain terms by the base commander, no can fucking do, military matters precedes your corporate bullshittery, that we see the Leviathan coming in to attack again. And this time, it doesn't look like it's going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this all alludes to something the girls saw coming in on the train, what looked like a new airship in a dry dock. And they'll go, well, we just saw that new warship, what about that thing? Get that thing up and flying and kill it with it. And they hear the unfortunate thing, that thing is not finished and not complete. Now, we hated the Colossus, but we still wanted giant fucking robots, god damn it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, let's make this thing like the goddamn Macross. I can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
The cheers of mecha fans from afar.
And to keep with the theme, instead of calling it the Colossus, we opted for a name that still fits within the knight motif that a lot of the Atlas machines have gone with.
Yeah, the knights, the paladins, all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. And since this is one scale upwards, it was natural to call it the Charlemagne.
And it is a battleship that transforms into a giant robot. Again, a la Macross.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for this is, as a battleship, it can get to the deployment areas quicker and more expediently. It still has plenty of armament for smaller scale battles. Mm-hmm. But you have the giant mecha form for the big guns, including some experimental weaponry.
Now, but by the time that as this is going on, the Leviathan is going through the same defenses that had driven it off in past encounters, as if they were nothing.
Yeah. And now, while the girls are arguing about getting the ship up and running and being told that they can't, an expert even comes in and says, even if it was fully operational, we don't have a team trained to use it. It's a battleship. Just the actual helm, where you have all of the controls, needs a small crew.
How many people would you consider appropriate for a skeleton crew with this kind of ship?
A skeleton crew on the bridge of a battleship-sized vessel would probably be 15 people.
Mm-hmm.
It's more likely that you'd have at least 30 for like optimal running. But you have a lot of stations in a bridge, a lot of stations, especially the bigger a vessel gets and the more systems it has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, weapon stuff and barriers and
The more
defenses.
complex it is, the more people
The
it's going
more-
to require.
Yeah,
Yep.
like multiple engineers, so it won't break down and explode.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of crew that goes into just the bridge crew. And of course, you're going to need, even then, a skeletonized crew for the rest of the ship.
Yeah. And because it's in this arguing about the fact that they'd need that kind of thing that the relic, which at this point is being held by Weiss, activates.
And the question she asks is, how can I use the Charlemagne to protect my friends?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that sounds like a fairly generic question for the Charlemagne, though it is specific to the Charlemagne. So she gets a huge info dump. Not just how to operate the beast, but schematics, details on the black box experimental tech that she should have no details for, and all of the things necessary for them to quickly finish the Charlemagne and train its crew. With this, she realizes that there's a giant cannon in the belly of the ship that is used with a massive amount of aura. And if any of you are thinking, that sounds like a wave motion gun, you might be right. It's not like any of us here haven't... Well, no, there's probably only 2 of us here who've seen Yamato. Never mind. But it's with this that Weiss tells the base commander that they'll get it done. They're a bunch of hunters. They all pull out their licenses, and they go over to the Charlemagne. Just to sit... Well, 8 of them, because Crow's with them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
9 if Ozpin came along, but I doubt he would. They all go over to the Charlemagne, and Weiss focuses on just getting the cannon exposed and getting it to shoot. And who else to get a giant aura monstrosity to shoot than resident aura master Jean? So they rush, and she's constantly directing everybody to hit this switch, pull that lever, press that button, and tells Jean to specifically go to the bay for the aura cannon. And as everybody's committing things, her unique skills that she's developed as becoming part of the scion of the Schnee family, the ability to see the bigger picture and direct all of its details, along with Ruby's ability to get the small-scale plans perfect, really shine interacting here. And it's a beautifully chaotic ballet as they just barely get the aura cannon exposed and have Jean fire into the face of the Leviathan, blowing its head clean off. I say clean, except, that's a big splash zone, so...
Yeah.
Surf's up.
But in the aftermath of that, while it was successful, Jean is down for the count, because it's only through his ability to manipulate aura and him having an abnormal amount of it that they were even able to fire the thing.
It normally requires a team of about a dozen people all feeding their aura into it.
Yeah. He's not dead, but he's not dead. He's just wiped.
Yep. He's very, very tired.
Mm-hmm.
And so they all return to the forward operating base here and tell the base commander if they'll be allowed to go into Atlas now. He tells them that he'll have to let Atlas Command know that the threat is neutralized and then wait for an answer. Mm-hmm. So they'll probably have time to rest. And it is at this time that Weiss says, okay, I'm taking this room, closes and locks the door, and writes down book after book after book after book after book after book of how to finish the ship, how to make everything more efficient and thus require less people overall, how to train the crews, etc., and hands it over to the base staff as they're about to leave.
And some of you may have recalled seeing that image of the books upon books of programming that it took to send the man to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
This is not too far removed from that when it comes to the sheer amount of material. Because, well, somebody reads the owner's manual when they get a car, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I believe you are specifically talking about the picture of Margaret Hamilton.
Yep. And the fact
Where
that the stack of books was as tall as she was.
Yep.
And that is a good analog for the amount of material that she was writing over the course of those days. You could easily have a gag that she has two summon knights standing outside the door just in case anybody gets close.
Yep.
Because I could easily see the gag of Ruby trying to walk in and the two knights just do the cross swords in front of the door.
Mm-hmm.
But the Volume 7 would end on the shot of them heading into Atlas. Especially the whole thing of seeing a floating city, which I know some people would want to cry realism about that, but I'm sorry, I will always love the concept of a floating city in any fantasy work.
Yeah.
I mean, please keep in mind that we still have magic and aura and semblances and dust. A floating city is kind of passé compared to those.
As long as it's internally consistent.
It is internally consistent. You're correct.
Yeah. Now, as far as Atlas itself, the look of Atlas we wouldn't change too much. The only thing that would be different is that Atlas is not being treated like a police state.
Yeah. Rather than the looks of Atlas being different, it's the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are not a police state, and because there isn't this big election to do, Atlas is more of a technocracy almost, a military technocracy with a focus on advancing technology in general to make the world a better, safer place.
Mm-hmm.
And so the energy of the city, because it's focused on technological advancement, is about industrialization. And so you've got this real even though it's high-tech looking, you've still got the feel of a rustic industrial revolution town.
Mm-hmm. And to that end, because of that, you're going to see a whole lot more hustle and bustle around the place. And this is where you could easily have a gag that they'd need to get a change of clothes because it's a hell of a lot colder up here, even more so than the rest of Atlas, which is already fairly cold as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
thinner air, colder. Yeah.
So if anybody remembers the Calgary airport scene from Cool Runnings, you can use that as a gag.
Cool Runnings. Goddamn.
You know, have a bunch of Jamaicans end up going into Calgary where it's 25 below and get that first blast of cold air and
Turns into ice cubes.
run right back in and put on all the layers.
Yep.
Including one guy who just wears his suitcase so he looks like a giant burrito. And their coach is just looking at them like, "What's the matter? You guys cold?"
I
Which,
mean, they're from Jamaica. That kind of figures.
Mhm. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't do that whenever some of my southern friends come up to visit me in January, and they get that blast of cold air.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, but you've lived in Minnesota.
I have. This is true. And of course, it wouldn't be too bad for a spoiler here, because, well, she lives in another cold place.
Hmm.
Hey.
I live in a warm place. Oh no.
It's okay. We'll only make fun of you a little bit.
Look, I've been in Georgia and the greatest comedy show I ever saw in Georgia was the time 1 inch was coming down, and everybody was treating it like it's the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that was crazy. I was stuck at school, I think, and we were fed leftover like lunch stuff for dinner, and everyone like played games to see if we could steal food from other people.
Meanwhile, everybody in my neck of the woods was looking at that kind of thing and going, "It's a fucking inch."
Like, you can't walk on that?
And when there was the winter storms in Texas, I will admit that I as bad as it was, I did take a twisted sense of humor due to the amount of times I've had people in warmer climates give me shit whenever I'm complaining about the heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Whereas I looked around at everybody like they were all stupid.
oh, they
Like,
were.
you got...
I saw photos of people panic buying around that time.
Not just panic buying, the people driving couldn't drive worth a damn. They decided they were going to try and go as fast as they always did.
Ah. A wonderful decision.
Remember, people,
Yeah.
drive slow in the snow so you have control.
To be fair, even
It's
people
like
up
when
here,
when it's raining, people run, and I'm like, you're gonna slip and fall. Like, what are you doing?
to be
Yes.
fair, people up here can't seem to drive in the snow either.
Yes, Monk, that's because they're just stupid and don't pay attention. I actually think in this case, this makes the Minnesotans worse. Texans don't have snow almost year round, or at least 9 months out of the year, to practice in.
Yeah. But one other detail is that there's a mix of off-duty military personnel and civilians. But this is not a police state. It's more akin to any sort of town near any military base anywhere.
If you've ever been to Fort Worth, Texas, you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
These are the civilian areas surrounding naval and army bases where a lot of commerce is traded between the military personnel and the towns. And in many of those towns, you will see that the people appreciate the presence of the military, because I'm going to be honest, just the presence of the military drives down crime.
Mm-hmm.
The presence of the military gives a better sense of security. So this is a give and take symbiotic relationship. These people both care about each other and rely on each other.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a hierarchy, but there has to be. There's a military.
Mm-hmm.
It's still run by the city itself is still run by a council, but one of the people on that council represents the military end of things.
Likely either ex-military or still in the military and acts as a liaison.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that there is actually a position in the military called liaison officer.
Mm-hmm. Now, when they do get to Atlas, they are escorted to the capital area by the ASOPs.
And yet,
instead of them being just being a bunch of hunter graduates from Atlas Academy, here they're the honor guard.
Yeah. See, I saw the name of this group when we first brought it up discussing it, because I didn't even know they existed until he brought up the Aesops while we were discussing this outline. And I went and looked them up, and I facepalmed, because I get the joke. Aesops. They are Aesop's fables.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how the fuck are you going to have a team that is Aesop's fables that don't actually exemplify Aesop's fables? And so, by making them the honor guard, we have turned them into Aesop's fables. Because now, they do embody the things that Aesop would like. Things such, usually these are the things associated with the best parts of the military. Honor, integrity, loyal, courage. Standing up for the people around you. That sort of guardianship that military people who truly believe in their oath take.
Mm-hmm.
And the Aesops are the exemplars, the paragons of that idea.
Now, I don't have any plans on making them the trainers of Team RWBY or anything like that. But while they're in Atlas, they will be getting some spare rooms in Atlas Academy. But when it comes to this escort, they're escorted to Ironwood's office, who effectively acts as the director general of Atlas. It's really, I really hate this whole thing of naming the capital the same as the country.
Mm-hmm.
So for the time being, if I'm referring to the floating city of Atlas, it's Atlas Prime.
Okay.
Just so I don't end up tripping over myself from here on in.
All right. But he's the director general of Atlas, the country.
Mm-hmm. He has an advisory panel he works with that runs the day-to-day parts of Atlas Prime.
Mm-hmm. And unlike the show, our Ironwood, he's not gone insane.
No.
He's not done his heel turn. He's taciturn, sure. He's very stern, as you would expect from the man who is supposed to be inspired by the Tin Man.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also very concerned with doing the right thing and making sure that more people survive and are protected.
Yeah.
As any good military man would be.
And ever since the fall of Beacon, a lot of his attention has been to reinforce and fix the problems in their armory. Chief among them being making sure that future knights can't get hacked.
Yep, he's all for military and technological advancement, which is why Atlas is such a near technocracy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things is to make sure that the knights are more robust in their protective measures, but the other is he's going to use them to supplement human elements in the military rather than replacing.
Not the Trade Federation.
And because of that, the Knight. One of the key things with the Knight program is the introduction. I believe we had talked about the introduction of Black Knights.
I don't think that was now, but yes.
Mm-hmm. But within that they're given leave to utilize some of the advanced tech to help improve their particular armaments.
Yep. And it's also at this point where Oz, in the guise of Oscar, And in the furthering of no more secrets, goes to Ironwood and pulls him aside to give him the same rundown he already gave the girls in Crow.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that this is a bull rush into an oncoming storm, that this is getting bigger than just the things he can control, and the time for secrets is done.
Mm-hmm.
So he tells Ironwood what he knows, and that he even tells him full on, "I promise, no tricks, no double talk, no secrets."
Mm-hmm.
Which is a lot coming from husband.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But in the interim, at the tech that they now have access to, this isn't going to radically change anybody's weapons, but just better reinforce them, because except for Yang,
who right now is still just using an arm made out of pure hard light because that's all she has.
Mm-hmm.
So Atlas decides to give Yang a hand.
Hey.
With
Let's go.
Weiss overseeing some of the design.
Overseeing the entire design. It was one-on-one, we had decided.
Yeah.
Of course, Weiss being Weiss and looking at the bigger picture and not at the small details, it's a little carried away.
Yep.
Now, this arm is easy for Yang to control because it just takes a little bit of a movement of her aura, so it's not nearly as taxing as the pure hard light arm she had.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a grappling cable, a grappling arm attached via hard light. It can absorb light from around it to create a sustained beam of, think solar beam from Pokemon.
Yep.
She gets the Big O piston punch. There's an amplifier in the elbow that it's again powered by her new hard light semblance abilities. So if you've ever wanted to see Big O but Yang style, there you go.
Yep.
And then because we were already adding 3 other mecha parts, we decided to go for a quadrology here, and we gave her hard light arm blades a la the Getter Razor from Shin Getter.
Because if we're gonna go nuts, we may as well go all in.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
One of the key appeals has been these characters with these kits and the unique scenarios that spring from them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why in the case of a character like Yang, I always found it kind of stupid that it's also a gun part was being used the same way as everybody else, even though of the main cast, three of them qualify for the it's also a gun, and that gun should not be used the same way. With Blake, it seems to be more like an Uzi or some kind of machine pistol. RWBY, it's obviously a bolt-action rifle, and with Yang, it's shotguns.
At this point, Monk, I think because she's changed her fighting style as per what we said regarding how that also changed her semblance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she should use shotgun gauntlets anymore. I in fact think that with the mechanical arm she has a lot of weaponry right there, both long range and short. I think instead that what could happen with the remaining gauntlet is it's modified to act in a way where it can kind of do the same piston punch thing her mechanical arm can.
Mm-hmm.
Except the way it does it is it's instead of being a full-on gauntlet, it's just a glove that projects her hard light around her fist like a boxing glove, and every
like
time
from her knuckles.
Well, from essentially yes, and then every time she hits with it, the hard light rebounds. It causes a rebounding force to increase the impact of that punch.
Ooh, like
And
a
it's-
knockback effect?
Not just a knockback effect; it's increased damage overall. It's essentially a way to allow her to use her new semblance efficiently with both hands instead of just one, and also give it another different adaptive edge compared to the robotic arm she has gotten. And in so doing, it's essentially a way for her to, when she's going in those fast combos, pile on even more damage.
Mm-hmm.
It takes less effort too, because it's a set of emitters that help to emit that energy from her semblance easier than her just pushing it out all herself, which would tire her quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more an adaptation of what she already has rather than a completely new thing.
Yeah.
And that way we ignore the fact that she had shotgun shells and wasn't using them as she punched people, and B, still get the same effect as if she had shotgun shells while she was punching people. We've changed it so it's exactly how it should have been, except no shotgun shells are involved.
Yeah. Now that being said, a lot of what would happen with the main cast in Volume 8 is doing menial hunter jobs.
Kind of like the same thing we did at the beginning of the Beacon arc, where you got to go around the place doing things.
Yeah.
Though in Beacon it was going around doing your courses, here it's doing jobs.
And the purpose of this is to establish Atlas as a place.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly as we've tried to do with every place that they've been for in a longer amount of time than just a small span.
Mm-hmm. And in a bit of a callback to earlier on, the rooms that they're in the academy, we got to have bunk beds. we have to call back to that particular thing.
Well, it would make sense that Atlas would use bunk beds. Most barracks are bunked.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Now, on the other end of things, I do want to catch up on what happened with Cinder, because again, she was also in the getting my ass kicked club, but she is given a second chance. I.e., the operation on the spring vault was a bust, but she's given a second chance with the winter vault. The reason she'd even be given a second chance is she's the only maiden that Salem has, and just killing her off and would create the risk of it would either they don't know if it would be someone random, because I don't think we did the whole thing of the power gets transferred to whoever was in their thoughts last, because that was kind of silly.
Mm-hmm.
So if they kill off Cinder, then they'd have to go looking for whoever's the next Winter Maiden, and that would delay plans even further.
Mm-hmm.
You mean the next spring maiden?
Yeah.
Fall maiden.
Fall maiden. There we go.
Sorry.
I don't
It's
remember.
a season.
I only remember Witten's is here. I only remember Winters is here, and Summer is Raven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
No, she was spring.
Oh, was she spring? I don't know.
Yeah, because it was
I don't-
Vinal. Yeah.
I don't watch the show. So sue me.
But the other thing is to try and reclaim her quote unquote honor. Cue all of the Zuko jokes.
You can blame Spoiler for the Zuko jokes.
But
However, after they're given their mission, and I feel like we should mention this now.
yeah.
Salem calls Tyrion after she's sure that the team I have dubbed Team Cunt has left.
Yes, because we And I should have mentioned that Torchwick and Neo are tagging along to keep an eye on things, and to
They're the
shoot her in
handlers.
and to shoot her in the back if things go south.
Yep. They're her handlers. And so after Team Cunt is out of the picture, Salem calls over Tyrion and tells him, if she can't kill Ironwood, you will.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. Her mission is take out Ironwood, get the Winter Vault, get in the Winter Vault and get the relic.
Yep. Get in the vault, get the relic, and kill Ironwood.
Because the reason for those things is to destabilize while giving her side a bigger advantage.
It's at this point, though, that Ruby, on one of her hunter jobs, finds a unique older woman with really weird prosthetic eyes on one of her assignments. And thinks she's really neat and's like, you should meet all my friends, and grabs her arm and drags her over to the barracks, essentially. And of course, the girls and everybody are having fun talking to this lady, who all they know her by is the name Maria, which is what came on the request. Until Crow walks in, does a spit take. And he's like, Maria Calavera? That was well worth it. Talking about all the nice booze he just spit out. Which, of course, surprises all of the girls. And they get into talking about how she can help Ruby.
And as far as how Ruby didn't know that the Maria that she had met was that Maria. Well, she never gave her full name. And
Maria's a pretty common, yeah.
And I know it might seem contrived that she just happens to meet the person they've been looking for, but that's part of the. I've always liked concepts that can seem a bit silly but still advance the story.
Well, and the big thing there is, Team Ruby and Team Junior are doing hunters missions to make sure their rank goes up as quickly as possible, so that they're in the position they need to be in order to fight Salem. It's not unlikely that at least one member of these teams would run into Maria, especially if she's making lower level requests, and then she gets revealed. Alternatively, Maria, being as smart as she is, because yes, our Maria is still vastly intelligent, could have known that a girl named Ruby Red, who apparently exhibited the silver eyes, was
Rose?
now an yes, Ruby Rose. Excuse me. Brain is not all here today. Just ignore me on that one. But yes, could have known that she was in Atlas and said, if I make enough low-level requests, I'm bound to hit one of them. So we don't ever really explain how it happens. It just happened. But there's enough there that you can make whatever connective material you want that's actually quite feasible and reasonable. But it's at this point that Ruby, of course, is asking Maria for help, knowing her to have once been a silver-eyed warrior herself. And it takes a little cajoling, a little bit of begging, a little bit of pleading, until Maria agrees to teach her.
If you need to do the gag of her trying to walk away while Ruby is grabbing onto her leg and getting dragged, then do it.
There are some good visual gags we can do with this. Puppy eyes, dragged while holding their ankle, etc., etc. Now, when Maria does agree to train her, and they start going off to do their own training, Maria reveals that the prosthetics she has are not actually prosthetics. They're a cover-up. They keep her from being a target. They keep people thinking, well, she was a silver-eyed warrior, but now she's just a good hunter. But she still has her silver eyes.
Yeah, because in the past she did get attacked by a few people and almost assassinated.
Yep. Maria also reveals that this whole thing, when she takes off the prosthetic, is an ancient Mistralan secret. Anyone who's watched anything else we've done knows where that particular gag comes from. Yep. And then also reveals that, well, every family of silver-eyed warriors know how the silver eyes work. And she's surprised that RWBY doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Until RWBY tells her that her mom has basically been missing all her life. You know, that old chestnut.
Yeah.
And so Maria's like, that makes more sense. And, you know, also consoles her because Maria is a wise old soul and doesn't want to see the little girl sad.
Yeah.
Big grandma vibes. Big grandma vibes. And so Maria trains her in the use of the silver eyes. And we learn that the silver eyes aren't just an ass pull that comes out of nowhere unexpectedly. They can be controlled. They can be used at will. They just require a massive amount of aura to use. The more you train with it, the more you expand your aura, and the less aura it uses at the same time. So it's expanding at both ends of the candle instead of burning at both ends of the candle, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Yep.
It can be a double-edged sword, but it also can be a good thing. It can help you.
And so they are training while everybody else is still doing their menial tasks, their menial hunter jobs, helping out around Atlas. And on the side of all of that, both RWBY and Weiss, working together, collaborating with each other, are getting used to their unique skills as leaders. As mentioned before, RWBY does the short-term, very detailed, small approaches, you know, things that need that narrow, tight focus. And Weiss is the person who looks at the bigger picture of things, looks at how the details fit together into a larger map. And it's with this respect that RWBY feels overwhelmed. She feels a little like Atlas holding the world because of the weight her powers give her, that particular responsibility and all of the things that could go wrong. But Weiss, again, looking at the bigger picture, tells her that she doesn't have to do everything alone. They are part of a team. All of them are. In fact, while the 4-person hunter teams are a thing, she argues that along with Team Junior, there's 7 of them. If you count Ozpin and Crow, there's 9. If you count any of their other friends that would come and help them in a heartbeat, the number becomes immeasurable. And also, she's not the only one with special powers. Everybody else has them too. There's the Yang's changes, Blake and Weiss getting stronger, Jean getting stronger, Nora and Ren getting stronger. Everyone's powers are increasing. They're all really taking hold and running with them. Things are not as impossible as they seem. And that really serves to cheer RWBY up. Whereas we also have some some montages of Team Junior and of Blake doing their own hunter missions. Until we get to the crux of the matter with Winter coming back into the picture.
And I know that they were doing that whole thing of her keeping an eye on the Winter Maiden before it got transferred to her. Did we decide to cut the middleman that she's already the Winter Maiden?
Yes.
Yes.
She is already the Winter Maiden because all because of the conversation Ironwood had with Ozpin when they just got to Atlas. Ironwood decided shit. If things are that bad, we need to make you the Winter Maiden now. So, all these things that are happening, it sounds like we're going through things very rapidly, but it's months of time. Months of time that they spend in Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
By the time Winter comes back into the scene, she has been the Winter Maiden for months. And thus has a pretty good grasp of her own powers at this point.
Instead of having it be an ass pull and pulling the hot potato of using Penny as a intermediary when it comes to the maiden powers.
Yeah.
Yep.
But instead of a training montage with the ace ops, the focus is instead on the hunter jobs. And I know it might sound that we're kind of writing out the ace ops, but that's because the whole rival team thing, we are far too advanced in the story to pull that kind of thing off. The point to do a rival team was the Vital Festival, and they already did that. Right now, doing a rival team just doesn't fit the story that's being built. But and this is one of those things where I'd love to have this animated proper in the way that I envision it. Since this is the first time that Weiss and Winter have spoken with each other in months, they agree to a sparring match with one gentlewoman's agreement. No using semblances, no using maiden powers, no summoning, no glyphs, nothing but swordplay. The obvious meta reason for doing this is, well, if everything is on the table, then Winter would wipe the floor with her even more so than normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maiden powers will do that.
Mm-hmm. And while Weiss ends up losing, she doesn't make it easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's learned quite a bit about being a leader and being an effective combatant.
And because of her unique ability to see the bigger picture of things, she's becoming a what people commonly refer to in tactics as a chess master.
Yeah. The main reason that Winter ends up winning out is more experience.
Winter's been a soldier longer than Weiss has been a hunter, so she has a lot more combat experience, especially since she's, Ironwood's right hand, and is more. She's more loyal to Atlas and its military than she is the Schnee family.
Mm-hmm.
Which you can have that there's a bit of tension over the fact that if it weren't for that loyalty, then she'd be the heir apparent instead of Weiss.
Weiss is slightly indignant because she didn't really want to inherit the company, and of course Winter is not interested in inheriting the company at all either.
Right.
No, but you have this whole thing of Winter being the person who should have but threw it away, and it's been fostered onto her.
Hoisted onto Weiss because her brother is a fucking retard, as we've been over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure even her father would, if broached on the subject, would be like, Wesley is nowhere near capable of running a company, let alone running his own dressing room.
I thought his name was Whitley.
Whitley.
I know that we have a sort of shut up Wesley that builds into us with people even near the name Monk. I know.
Yeah. So if I screwed up the name, well, meme magic is real. but but while this is going on, this is also as good a spot as any to mention that this is where we'd wrap up the whole thing with Adam. Because while all this has been going on, he's been trying to make skirmish attacks against Menagerie.
But because Sienna Khan was previously retrieved by Blake's parents, Belladonna's, Menagerie is ready. Menagerie has set up numerous guerrilla fortifications and traps in order to essentially have Adam fight a guerrilla war in an urban jungle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good. Well, this puts them in a stalemate. Adam constantly tries to probe his way through, but can't really, and Menagerie is not willing to leave their fortifications.
Yeah. And I know we talked about the forgetfulness with maidens, so there's the question of how come that doesn't happen with Winter. The answer is that since she's had several months to train, she's figured out a way to be selective with that forgetfulness.
Not to mention the fact that the Atlas military has been studying a great many things having to do with relics, aura, semblance, and the maidens.
Mm-hmm.
They have determined that the magic that comes from being a maiden isn't absolute. It can be influenced and changed by a particularly willed maiden.
Mm-hmm.
So, along with their help, she does have the ability to, selectively choose who and who doesn't forget her presence. And in addition to that, she has chosen to take from that forgetfulness and increase her ability to fight. She's enhanced herself further than most maidens would normally have been enhanced.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't a case of trying to pull authoritis. It's more of this is an extension of Winter's character, because with a lot of the maidens that we do see, none of them have a soldier mentality.
Yeah.
The closest would maybe be Raven, and even that's a stretch.
Raven's a bandit.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason Crow remembers her is, well, he's immune to the maiden magic.
Because he's
being
no.
Yeah, being related to Ozpin and having been around that so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That and the fact that as we made it clear, the two of them don't like each other at all.
They don't like each other because of the apparent betrayal they both feel over each other.
Mm-hmm.
We've also determined that their ability to turn, into fucking crows is just a remnant of true magic.
Yeah.
So they're a little weird. And the only reason people follow what Raven says in the Bronwyn clan are because they know she's strong enough. They don't know who she is. They don't remember who she is either. They just know the leader of the Bronwyn clan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But Winter has a soldier mentality.
And people need to remember her or she can't really function in the military.
Mm-hmm.
We would want to make sure that there's at least probably, like, during the conversation with Pyrrha, like, say this was actually scripted out, it would have to be mentioned as the possibility would have to be brought up of that, the effects of the anonymizing magics being fought against, I guess.
Yeah.
If Pyrrha, even if Pyrrha just asked about it, like, isn't there a way I can choose who remembers me or not? And maybe, like, Glinda or someone just say that, like, if there is, they don't know about it, or like they don't know how to do that.
Yeah, we have had an underlying theme of a lot of corrupted understanding of the past,
Mm-hmm.
especially since folk tales are how a lot of knowledge has gotten passed down. But
You mean a folktale isn't a historically reliable document?
For shame. I thought all folktales were
What? That's
100% true always.
crazy.
What are you talking about? Everybody knows folktales are 100% true always.
getting back on the rails, by this point, Cinder has infiltrated the city and is trying to maintain cover. You know, going in wearing a cloak, and I would still have her wearing red and not black, because having her switch to wearing black just the only time that she should be wearing black is when she's doing a stealth mission,
Which is not this. Mm-hmm. She's trying to blend in, sure, but she's not trying to like stealth her way through stuff.
No.
Not to mention the fact she's supposed to serve as a corrupted foil to RWBY. So wearing red as part of that foil that makes sense.
And if it's necessary to push for what her cover ID is, you could always have her as being a singer in any one of the many taverns all over the city.
Yep.
I mean, especially since her backstory in canon was trying to reference Cinderella, so why not? But the point is, her ability to maintain her cover ends the moment she spots RWBY.
Yep. Sees RWBY out and about and just loses her shit. Which, of course, Torchwick and Neo are nowhere near prepared for. They didn't figure she would be this fucking stupidly homicidal about RWBY.
There's also the fact that the only person that nobody else knows that she's been dealing with Pyrrha sharing headspace with her.
Having your own schizophrenic mindfuck is great.
And she's been dealing with this little issue for months.
Ever since she took a piece of Pyrrha's soul.
Mm-hmm. And although everybody else just thinks that she's slightly mad because they see her as talking or yelling at somebody who isn't there.
Yeah, they think she's kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
And it's not like she knows Pyrrha's name anyways.
Of course, all she did was fight her and almost kill her.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what allows RWBY to get the advantage to put her at weapons point.
Yep. Cinder thinks she's bigger shit than she is. As Monk constantly puts it about her, her eyes are still bigger than her stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And this is at the point where RWBY and Cinder, now that they're fighting again, RWBY is not being one-sidedly beaten. RWBY has gotten better through all the interactions that have occurred since Beacon. She's been training with Maria. She's been training with her friends. She's been taking hunter jobs. She helped with what happened in Mistral and in Haven. There's been a lot that's happened to really advance her as a fighter. So she has a lot more experience fighting. Additionally, not only is she now as experienced, but possibly even more experienced than Cinder when it comes to combat, Cinder has, again, the biggest handicap in the world. Pyrrha screaming in her face. And obviously, at this point, with Cinder saying things like, saying things that probably hint at the fact that it's Pyrrha, you know, mentioning stupid things like, I don't know, what would be a good one here? You stupid red ponytailed bitch. Get out of my way. I'm going to fucking kill her. Who cares? You died to me. You're dead, you stupid bitch. Cinder would be fucking frothing at the mouth, snapping her teeth at an apparition only she can see and hear while fighting.
Yeah.
And this, of course, RWBY is going to take advantage of all of these things because of the fact that, it's a distracted opponent. And how does it go? Never interrupt your opponent while they're making a mistake.
Yeah.
Eventually, RWBY gets the ability, or gets the upper hand on her and pins her to the ground.
Yeah. The only reason that Cinder doesn't get apprehended is she breaks orders and uses her maiden powers to overwhelm to get out.
But of course, Atlas, being Atlas, knows what signs to look for when a maiden activates her powers, and they know that there's only supposed to be one maiden in Atlas. So, because they saw Cinder, because RWBY fought her, and because Cinder used her maiden powers, Atlas goes to high alert.
And that's how we'd have Volume 8 end with Atlas in high alert. Now with go ahead.
I would like to say that this high alert probably also puts their vault on a major lockdown.
Yeah.
Atlas being a militaristic country, knowing that there is a strategic resource, and if none of you know what a strategic resource is, please look it up, locked away in the vault. So that vault is a door they can't control. If anybody who has the ability to control that door gets to it, they've lost a strategic resource. So they would build their own fortifications around it, like any good military does.
Yipper.
And with that, we start Volume 9.
And since a lot of Volume 9 is going to be focused on shit getting real, I do want to tackle the whole thing with Adam first, just to get that out of the way.
All right.
Because around the time that things end up getting more real on Atlas Prime, Adam after the mixed results of his guerrilla campaign, launch an assault on Monastery, and okay, who's doing the typing?
Me. Don't worry. I'm putting this in where it belongs.
All right. He ends up getting to the main area and is confronted by the Belladonnas and a returning Sienna who very much has the energy of "I lived, bitch."
Revenge is a dish best served cold.
And the fight with Sienna and Adam, which is, I always felt that if Sienna Khan is supposed to be a reference to Shere Khan from the Jungle Book, this should be someone who isn't trifled with, because if you remember from either the story or the Disney movie, people were always scared shitless of Shere Khan.
I mean, even when they took all of the Jungle Book characters and made Tailspin, Shere Khan was a ruthless corporate magnate. So Shere Khan is not someone to be fucked with, in which case we extrapolate that over to Sienna, not someone to be fucked with. This battle is short.
Hell, if we could get away with it, I'd probably do the count to 10 thing that was in the movie.
That'd be fun.
There are only 10 seconds left on your life. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yep. But Sienna and Adam fight. Adam at this point is demoralized, has been beaten down in multiple ways. His own army is even questioning him. Adam has done everything he can for what he believes to be the best path for the Faunus Nation, and has nothing to show for it. And this knockdown, drag-out slugfest, where he is severely on the losing end, just this one-sided pummeling, is an example of everything he's lost, essentially.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, Sienna doesn't give him a choice. Sienna doesn't even try to haggle with him. She's like, you brought this on yourself. And it's a public beheading, just right in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm. And an ultimatum is given to the rest of Adam's followers. Either return to her service or get shot.
Serve me or serve bullets.
Mm-hmm.
You have no other choice. And once she gets the White Fang back, she essentially dissolves them into the Menagerie militia.
Mm-hmm. As far as why she would do that, because, well, Sienna can see the bigger picture.
Yep, and she's pragmatic, like most Faunus.
Yeah. Due to
Just
that,
like what?
having two armies would create way too many problems.
Yep. But this also means that Sienna would sit in another chair alongside the Belladonnas, being a military leader to help with the military side of Menagerie.
Yeah, she's basically running the militia.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, you now have a small council forming with Menagerie.
Mm-hmm. Now, back to Atlas Prime. In the intervening time, they've been doing a whole lot of studying and research when it comes to the relic. And since this includes the one that was brought and the one that they already have. But the thing that interrupts that is the sight of the biggest fucking Grim anyone's ever seen.
Yep. Just after Atlas has gone into red alert, a giant fucking Grim dreadnought shows up.
Mm-hmm. The same big ass Grim that Salem was using as her ship in the actual show. We're just reincorporating that. And
yep. It is gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes I hear about what canon has done, and it just blows my mind that that's the way that they went.
Yeah. Now, when it's discovered, this thing is miles away, but it is slowly approaching.
Yeah. It's essentially the looming threat.
Mm-hmm.
Trouble on the horizon. It's also at this point that Tyrion shows up proper. Now, we already knew from what
Exactly.
Salem was telling him that he's backup in case Cinder fucks up. But he also has separate orders to, if he can, murder the shit out of Ruby. And there's no subtlety to what he's doing these days. He's not trying to assassinate from the shadows. He is stalking and hunting her down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not that he was all that subtle to begin with.
His tail is pretty easy to see.
Well, a cloak can hide a lot of things.
True.
It's at this point that Team Cunt is trying to gear up to actually assassinate Ironwood. Now that the place is aware that they're and they've set the place on high alert, they just want to get what they came there to do done and leave.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, Winter, knowing that Ironwood is what we call in the business a high-value target, is insisting that Ironwood should not go anywhere without her, since she's a maiden and she has maiden powers, and it's clear the enemy has a maiden too from the alert. And because of it, while Ironwood is sitting in with the council, and Winter's there, the council kind of grumbles about it. They don't like that she's there with him. They think it's inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. Which is understandable that they would see the most powerful person in the city in terms of what they can do. Sitting in the council chambers as a bit intimidating.
Even though that's not what Ironwood is trying to do. They might think of it as being strong-armed.
No, and Ironwood has to make it. Ironwood in this instance would make explicitly clear. She insisted on being my bodyguard.
Yeah.
And it was just announced that there's a red alert, so it would be wise to have the council protected.
Mm-hmm. Now, even though the dreadnought is miles away, that doesn't mean it isn't fucking with Atlas Prime, because it is firing smaller Grim at the city. When I say smaller Grim, I'm talking like Beowulfs. But a lot of them are being handled by local hunters and the Atlesian military. This, of course, includes Team RWBY helping out whenever these Grim end up landing in the city.
This also includes the new advancements in the Night Glass robots, the Lensknecht.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, because Team RWBY and a bunch of robots are all fighting against a bunch of Grim, all their new stuff is going to be on display. And no one shows that better than Yang with her new robot arm.
Mm-hmm. But the Landsknecht is essentially a improvement on the Knight.
Yep.
Some of them even having heavier guns or heavier melee weapons, or both.
Why not both? ¿Por qué no los dos?
Mm-hmm. But they are meant to be the heavy infantry. If the Knight is an infantry robot.
Mm-hmm.
But the purpose of these Grim attacks is essentially the diversion. Because at some point during these diversions, Tyrion does manage to sneak into Ironwood's chambers. Because remember, he's the backup in case Cinder fucked up in her job, which
she did.
Yeah, he considers her having fucked up by just revealing that she's there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
She hasn't even made the attempt on Ironwood yet, but he's like, she's a lost cause because she already showed her hand.
And Tyrion is ever eager to gain the favor of his queen.
Ew. Simp.
Ew.
The 11th commandment: Thou shalt not simp. But this instead of having a fight with Ironwood and Watson, because somebody had remembered Gravity games, or maybe played Gravity Rush on the PS Vita.
Mm-hmm.
instead, the fight is against Tyrion and Ironwood. And this is also where Ironwood would demonstrate his semblance.
Which we've changed greatly.
Because the original semblance, Metal, is barely a semblance, it's a personality trait.
Yeah. We've decided to take the word metal, both in its philosophical meaning and, if you use a homophone, its literal meaning. The man turns to a metal, just like Colossus the X-Man. I have to say that because if I say just Colossus, people might think I mean the terrible robot, and I never mean that. Obviously, because he's turning into metal, he actually increases his real durability and strength. In high-stress situations, this increases his ability to perform cognitive analysis. And the coolest part of all, remember that Ironwood has a robotic prosthesis. When he uses his semblance, it causes him to feel his robotic prosthesis as if it's a real flesh and blood arm all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Who said robots can't feel?
But in this particular fight itself, Ironwood still sacrifices his other arm in order to win. It's just that it isn't through some barrier bullshit. No, he lets himself get attacked just so he can get Tyrion close enough so he can catch these hands.
Or at least this hand, since the other one's now gone.
Yeah.
And, well, Ironwood does a Gallagher. And for those of you who don't know what a Gallagher is, go look up Gallagher Watermelon Sledgehammer, and you'll see what I mean. He's been beating on Tyrion for a while when winter finally arrives, and Ironwood pulls the Gallagher. And, well, she avoids the splash zone through sheer skill.
Mm-hmm.
Matrix style, kind of?
I don't know if it's Matrix style, but she does just think Luke Valentine from from Hellsing.
Yeah.
When he kills those 4 guys and avoids the blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the point is, Tyrion's not getting back up because he's kind of dead.
You know, it really doesn't help when you lose your head over your queen.
Oh. And as if
No
things
longer head over heels in love.
as if things
One way to get ahead of the game.
Oh my word.
As if things could to get things going from bad to worse. Because obviously Team Cunt is made aware pretty easily that Tyrion decided to go off on his own and try and at least back him up.
Yep, they attempt to go after Ironwood, but since Winter's already there, they run into the Maiden.
You are technically correct. The best kind of correct. But it is, even though you would think it would be an even fight because two maidens, but if Cinder doesn't want to go all out and deal with collateral damage of accidentally killing her partners.
Not only that, Cinder has no combat training. She's never trained her maiden powers. There's never been any indication that she went and deliberately and systematically trained to use her maiden powers effectively. She just uses them as bursts when she needs it.
Yeah, it's brute forcing the way through it, whereas Winter has far more finesse.
Yep. And not to mention the fact that Winter, again, Iron Hand's right-hand woman, probably literally his right-hand woman now. Mm-hmm. Ironwood's already hurt. Ironwood has to go to a military hospital to get another prosthesis put on, so now he has 2 robot arms. Yes, we turned him into Jax, but better.
Could technically get more He could get like upgrades that Yang kind of has and be overpowered as fuck.
You're right. He could sit down with Weiss and have her design him specific robot arms that work the best with his semblance.
Mm-hmm.
Getting like a blade that comes out of his knuckles or whatever, some crazy crap.
Yeah, there'd be stuff that could be done there, but that's something we can spitball later. Winter's she's fed up with this bullshit. She is absolutely fed up and taking no prisoners. So in the end, Cinder can't hold a candle to the winter breeze.
But even though the Grim have been cleared out of the city, there isn't any armament that's big enough to take out that dreadnought, and that includes the dust missile that was meant for a Leviathan class Grim, not for this dreadnought, which is much bigger.
Much bigger.
Mm-hmm. And they can't use the Charlemagne because that's still not in full production, and getting the Charlemagne they had used previously would take time.
Yep.
Because I'd say by this point, would you say that the dreadnought is like 3 days away?
Something like that. I'd say it's a few days away, yeah, because of how slow it's traveling. But it's trying to hit them with attrition tactics, so it has really no resistance once it gets there.
Yeah, and even if they use dust missiles, first off, there's collateral damage. Second off, that thing is likely teeming with Grim if it can fire them like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if it crashes, it's going to turn wherever it lands into a hellhole that'll overrun that area with Grim.
Exactly.
And then there's the suggestion about using the relic. And
this time, it's Atlas's relic.
Mm-hmm. And this is also where there's the revelation that Atlas Prime houses the vault, as well as the perfect spot to do it.
Yeah, that's a pretty big. You've basically put one giant fucking armament and fortification over that vault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the relic that's within Atlas is the relic of creation. And as far as there's the obvious question of why didn't anybody use this thing beforehand? The spirit that is the manifest power of the relic is quirky.
He's very particular.
Very, very particular. Just because he can make anything that has the potential to be made, that doesn't mean he will.
Yep. He's got to be interested in doing it, otherwise he's going to half-ass it, or not do it at all,
or just not do it. Especially since he considers himself the genius among geniuses.
He is a genius designer, an artiste. You cannot make an artiste work on something so mundane. No, darling.
Yeah. But they do open up the vault and meet with the Jinn inside of the relic of creation. And after being made at first he's not interested. Then he sees how big the dreadnought is, and that gets his attention.
It's not like he's worried, though. He's more just, something that big? Maybe it would be interesting to design a countermeasure.
Mm-hmm. But the resources that are available aren't sufficient. And I know some people might say, didn't they use the relic in order to make Atlas float? We're not doing that. The thing that keeps Atlas floating is thousands upon thousands of dust crystals.
They float because of gravity magic.
Mhm.
Why would they? In the first, never mind. I'm just not even gonna ask the question.
Good.
Because they had that dumb thing of him making something undoes the other thing, which was dumb.
Yeah, it's also like it doesn't make sense that that's the option they went with in the first place. Like, why would?
Don't ask us to make sense of their decisions. There is no sense to be made, hun.
I know it just bothers me.
Oh, I know. It bothers everyone.
Yeah.
It hurts my brain every time I think about it, so I just don't think about it.
In our first run of attempting this reconstruction, I remember a long ass debate about what the hell a soul is because of that whole thing.
And we just decided to, well, do something different.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, though, he sees Ruby. Because, of course, he's going to know what a Silver-Eyed Warrior is capable of. And, of course, starts looking at her eyes, in which case we get a gag of his face nearly pressing against her, and too close happens.
Yeah. Personal space.
Get out my fucking face before I fucking punch you. That's what I'd say. But with that, he creates a set of spectacles, enhancement lenses, just like you with a magnifying glass against ants when you were 5 years old. It's in reverse because this takes the small source and makes it big.
And looks like a very screwed up telescope.
Yep.
And the whole purpose of it is to be an enhancement. Again, it's to amplify the ability of the silver eyes.
Yep.
Which the idea of using the silver eyes on that thing, Ruby is hesitant because look at how big the damn thing is.
Which the spirit responds, it doesn't matter. With your power, it doesn't matter how big they are.
It's still a giant grim.
Mm-hmm.
And the parallel that I used when we were discussing this was the scene of pulling down a Star Destroyer in The Force Awakens. Not The Force Awakens, The Force Unleashed. Because Starkiller was like, I can't yank down that thing. That thing is massive. Remember, folks, size matters not.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, she does give it a try, which results in a feather and wing laden beam of light hitting the dreadnought.
And it doesn't just turn the dreadnought to stone, though, like it is done to other Grimm. It freezes it in time, which, to be honest, is a boon because that thing was over inhabited areas of the rest of the country of Atlas. So it falling out of the sky as a giant stone would have been terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's just stuck there. A big ass rock just stuck there.
Big ass rock stuck in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows why it's stuck in time, except for the creation spirit, and he's not talking.
No, in fact, and after the whole thing is done, his little invention falls into disrepair. But
It was a one-time use item.
Mm-hmm. But he's not even mad about his creation disappearing because it did what it set out to do.
And it did it so beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
It's at this point though that essentially the war, if it could be called as such, is finished. All the Grimm in the city have been cleared up because no more are being fired.
Mm-hmm.
And the giant Grimm is all that remains.
Yeah.
So the RWBY crew, and I'm going to start calling them the RWBY crew since there's 2 teams and a bunch of adults,
Mhm.
all go out to the giant Grimm to see what the hell this thing was.
Yeah. And what is discovered in the thing, and just taking a ship to where the dreadnought is, it would be relatively easy. But what they find in the place is a horrifying sight.
They're the bodies of human and faunus melted into and mixed in with the Grimm of the dreadnought.
Mm-hmm.
And Oz specifically, with Ironwood and Crow close behind him, find Theo, the headmaster of what we have renamed to Umbra Academy
Mm-hmm.
in Vacuo. And because of this, soon after, the rest of the RWBY crew catch up, including actual Team RWBY and Team Junior and Winter. And of course, Oz mentions to the crew that he hadn't heard from Theo for a few years. He wasn't even there at the Vital Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Which immediately sparks concern in Ironwood, Crow, Winter, and Weiss. Remember, Weiss sees the big picture, so she's absolutely terrified of the implications of that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Oz drops the bomb. It's very likely that the entire country of Vacuo is the dements of Salem.
Mm-hmm.
And has been for a while.
Now, as far as why we would do something like that, having a land of darkness as that is somewhere in Remnant just made no goddamn sense. But the more that we thought about it, the idea that she had taken over Vacuo fit like a puzzle piece.
Not to mention the fact that all the themes of Vacuo have to do with things that are unseen, hidden, or otherwise formless.
Mm-hmm.
Even the word vacuo is Latin, sort of, for void. I say sort of because it's kind of pseudo-Latinish, but still.
Yeah. But through the because of that whole no more secrets, this is where Oz ends up revealing what he knows about Salem.
And this is where we have done the absolute huge overhaul of awesomeness. That is the background of Ozma and Salem. No, they were never spouses. No, they were never even romantically involved. They were considered the 2 greatest true mage minds of their time.
Mm-hmm.
And they got along as research and business partners more than anything. And now, a description of Salem that I boiled down to a 2-word name that I'll get to in a second. But Salem is, she's willing to use her enemy's power as her own, at all costs. Even though everyone will warn her that, it would backfire on her, including Ozma.
Before you get to that, I should note that we had made clear that in these early days, Grimm attacks were a lot more frequent, and that's what caused the chain of events that would create the idea of hunters and people using dust to repel, which would lead to the creation of the Huntsman Society.
Oh,
No,
no.
we lost you there.
No.
Am I back?
You are back.
You're back now.
the point is that in the early days, huntsmen were support for true mages.
Yeah.
And dust magic was meant to be a kind of magic that was easier to learn and practically apply at a rapid pace than true magic.
Yeah. And what Ozma and Salem were trying to do was they were trying to find a way to curb the Grimm threat once and for all. Now, Ozma and Salem both understand that the Grimm are a natural byproduct of the cosmology of their world. There's no getting rid of the Grimm. There'll always be more.
Mm-hmm.
But to curb them so that the rest of the races had their own safety was feasible. Which is why they performed the type of research that they could do. But Salem, as I said, willing to use the enemy's power as her own to try and beat them. To which Ozma tries to pull a Nietzsche and says, "Be careful lest ye become the monster you hunt."
Mm-hmm.
Her research goes so far that she can control Grimm and even wear Grimm as armor. And she is extremely proud of this achievement, to the point of psychosis. Ozma, of course, can't let something like that happen. That is sacrificing the soul of humanity that you need in order to remain human.
Mm-hmm.
He rejects her research entirely and orders her to stop, but she doesn't. So he banishes her. And when he does, she gets even deeper into this abyss that she's opened herself to try and stop the Grimm at their source, even though previously she acknowledged that there's no stopping the Grimm because they are a natural byproduct of their cosmology.
Mm-hmm.
But in her mind, because she wants to stop the Grimm, she has to use the Grimm against the Grimm, fight fire with fire in the most terrible way. And because she's been expelled from this scientific consortium, she starts using herself as an experimental test bed for her powers, causing her to become something more grim than human.
Cue all the Obi-Wan jokes.
Mm-hmm. You were supposed to help us balance the Force, not destroy it?
No, the whole more machine than man.
Oh, yeah. That one, too. There's a bunch of them. We could use plenty of them. Do you have any idea how little that narrows it down? But let's review the facts. Willing to use any power as her own to get her own goals, even using herself as an experimental testbed and becoming a mutated monstrosity because of it. A mad and unethical scientist by any name, by any stretch that we see. There are only two words that should be in the minds of anyone who's a fan of video games: Professor Hojo.
Yep.
Final Fantasy VII. This is Professor Hojo, except, well, high magic.
The true villain of Final Fantasy VII.
Yes, that is actually the truth. And it is with this revelation that as we come to the end of this flashback, because it's the way I have envisioned it, and I explained to Monk, and he apparently liked, the way this whole reveal for her background is going on, it's a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get to the last part where Ozma, whatever name you want to use, I just use Oz, is explaining that Salem is more grim than human. It's her sitting at a desk with a feverish look on her face, and the camera is zooming in on her. And as all you can see is her face, the camera loses its flashback filter, because everybody knows all flashbacks have some sort of filter, and starts zooming out from her face with a remarkably disappointed look on her face at this point. As the camera zooms out, you start seeing her throne. You see the throne room, and you see all of Salem's court, I guess we'll call them, including a chastised and kneeling Team Cunt at her feet. and it zooms out further, and you see the castle of Vacuo in Vacuo Prime, and then you see all of Vacuo Prime itself, and that is where we get a sudden cut to black.
Mm-hmm. And this also means that we are going to be in uncharted territory when we do part 4, because the obviously even if we delayed it for a while, the canon end of things wouldn't be getting to Vacuo anytime soon.
I mean, our end of things has veered wildly from canon at this point, Monk. I don't think we need to worry about being in uncharted territories.
Well, the other thing is the fact that there is very little that's outright known when it comes to Vacuo.
Mm-hmm.
Which means we, for lack of a better term, we have a blank slate, a blank check even.
Which is nice. I like that idea.
I like that too, because then you can make your own facts.
I mean, there's a few things that are present, but when I say a few, I mean like maybe three things we could take.
I think it's mostly like we have some still images.
Why do we care?
Stuff, like information from.
We don't.
We only have a geographical confirmation of where it is,
Mm-hmm.
which is a desert. And because of that, we've decided that we decided when we were talking the other day that Vacuo, people, is just dark, demonic, grim-infested Agrabah. Vacuo Castle is the Sultan's castle from Aladdin. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Vacuo Prime, Agrabah, the Agrabah city itself.
Yeah.
But we'll get into those details later.
Yeah. Now, I can't say when part 4 will happen, but it will happen before the year is out. Because I obviously don't want this to be hanging over us for later on. It'll probably be sometime after the 100th episode,
which is coming up, if memory serves, in October.
Yes, it's going to be early October. Now, that being said, I should note we have no plans to do a GeekWatch episode next week on September 4th. The main reason for this is that day All Out is happening. And
Yep.
I had made it clear that I am not since I know I'm going to be watching All Out, I am not going to do an episode of GeekWatch and right after a pay-per-view, because I'm going to be riffing along with the pay-per-view with my friends, and I'm not going to have any energy. And doing the GeekWatch in the afternoon just doesn't suit.
Yeah, we can't always do it in the afternoon, just for this stuff, to accommodate our lovely friends.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
That being said, that doesn't mean I won't be doing anything that week. So, some of you may be familiar with the Hangover Special streams, where we go through a bunch of trailers that people aren't talking about at presentations like E3 or Gamescom or the Game Awards, and so on. Because we are all about finding and exploring the hidden gems instead of just being all woe is me about the state of gaming. Are there plenty of things that suck? Yeah.
Sturgeon's Law.
Mm-hmm.
90% of everything is crap. I'm really looking forward to that Hangover special.
I can't wait.
Yes, both of you if you're willing to, you can definitely join us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to join you 100%.
Unless, of course, you get food poisoning again.
Yeah, that too. I will try not to do that.
Just don't order from that place again.
Yeah, facts.
And
But was the food at least good? Did it at least taste good?
No, because they got my order wrong. It was so sad.
Oh, well, fuck that.
yeah, never order from there again. Now, I'd also like to formally to you two, while we're still here, extend the invitation to the 100th episode. That is going to be very special, and I know we're probably going to try and get as many GeekWatch veterans as is feasible to participate, simply because, it's a big benchmark. We want everybody to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the exact date for when that GeekWatch episode is going to come down the pipe?
Originally, I had thought it was going to be October 2nd, but given the shifts, it's looking like it's going to be the 16th of October.
All right, well, there you two have it. If either of you would like to attend the 100th episode and celebrate with the rest of us, October 16th.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, so as Yoshi P would often say, please look forward to it. But I like Yoshi P.
He's a good man, and he understands what Final Fantasy is.
Mm-hmm.
Great graphics, great music, great gameplay, great story, and chocobos and moogles.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Also a guy named Sid.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if he quite said that one, but he probably meant it.
Yeah. But, and of course, I am back on the interviewing train. I'm not doing double duty anytime soon, and I'm not doing the whole multiple interviews each day over the span of a week like I was doing certain months. Of course, there were some cases where I would have an interview a day for like 2 or 3 months in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm on a crusade.
Mm-hmm.
But I only have a few. I opted to take most of August off from doing interviews. But since we're out of the month, I'm getting back on the grind. And even with that I have no intention of doing a whole lot of slowdown when it comes to content on this channel. So keep an eye out for that kind of thing. And of course, we're probably going to be finished with Emberwind when it comes to Valley of the Judge by the end of September.
That's going to be fun.
And of course, and as I've mentioned in the past, just because we finished with one book does not mean the Valley's journey ends. But there's all of that to look forward to. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and